Bruno didn't mean to tear the wallpaper open. He just wanted the scratching to stop at 2:17 a.m. Barefoot and shaking, he drove his fist into the thin plaster above his bed. The sound had been steady for an hour. Not rats, not pipes. It sounded deliberate, slow, like charcoal dragging across paper. His knuckles split. The scratching stopped. For 3 seconds, then something scraped once more, harder this time, directly over where his head had been resting. Bruno staggered back, chest tight, breath shallow. "Keith," he whispered toward the hallway. "Keith, get in here, now." No answer. He grabbed his phone flashlight and angled it upward. The torn wallpaper sagged. Black dust drifted down onto his pillow, and then he saw it. Lines. Thin, precise charcoal lines covering the ceiling. Not random, not frantic, structured. A grid. Streets. His streets. Bruno's stomach dropped as recognition crawled in. That was Pine Hollow Road. That crooked bend was the gas station near the highway. He knew this layout. He had walked it every day since moving to Montana after the hiking accident that nearly killed him. And in the center of the map, his bedroom, marked with a red circle. His pulse roared in his ears. "Keith," he shouted, voice cracking. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Keith burst into the room, hair wild, eyes annoyed until he saw Bruno's face. "What did you do?" Keith demanded, then followed Bruno's shaking finger upward. The annoyance drained from him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "You painted that," Keith finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "With what?" Bruno snapped. "You see paint in my hands." Keith stepped closer to the bed. The red circle wasn't brushed on. It was pressed in, thick, almost absorbed into the plaster, like a stain that had always been there. "That's not funny," Keith whispered. Bruno swallowed. "You hear it too, right? The scratching?" Keith hesitated. "I thought you were pacing." Bruno felt cold. 3 months ago, he'd found the antique map at an estate sale outside town, 1879, drawn by a cartographer who vanished the same year. Bruno bought it because something about it felt familiar. He told himself it was just his love of trails, of topography. He liked seeing the land reduced to lines he could understand. He never told Keith that when he unrolled it in his room, he felt watched. He never told him the red dot hadn't been there the first night. Now it was on his ceiling. Keith backed away from the bed. "Okay, this is maybe someone's messing with you." "Who?" Bruno's laugh cracked. "You think someone broke in, mapped the neighborhood, and drew this over my bed?" Keith didn't answer. Bruno's gaze drifted to the corner of the room. The antique map. It hung flat against the wall where he'd mounted it in a cheap frame. There were more red marks now, not just one over his neighborhood. 3-1 near the river trail. 1 2 blocks away. 1 at the edge of town, Keith, he said slowly. It's spreading. Keith stepped closer to the wall map. That wasn't there yesterday. You've been staring at it. Keith rubbed his face. You keep it in the living room, Bruno. It's huge. Bruno felt the old accident creeping into his mind. The cliff edge giving way, the fall, the whisper in the dark before rescuers found him. Coordinates. He'd heard coordinates in the wind. He hadn't told anyone that. Keith pulled out his phone. We should take pictures, document this. Bruno hesitated. Something about that felt wrong, like showing it to someone else would make it aware. Don't, Bruno said. Keith looked at him. Don't what? Don't post it. I didn't say I'd post it. You were thinking it. Keith's jaw tightened. You're not thinking straight. Maybe he wasn't. But as Keith snapped photos anyway, Bruno felt the air shift, subtle, like pressure changing before a storm. And somewhere in the walls, scratch. Both of them froze. It wasn't above them anymore. It was behind them. From the living room, they moved slowly, fear tightening their movements. The house felt narrower than usual, the hallway longer. The scratching grew louder. Charcoal on drywall, deliberate. When they stepped into the living room, the antique map had changed again. The red marks pulsed darker, and beneath one of them, in tiny script that hadn't been there before, was a name. Marcus. Keith blinked. You know a Marcus? Bruno's throat went dry. Marcus was the EMT who pulled him out of the ravine 3 months ago. He hadn't spoken to him since the scratching stopped. The room felt too quiet. Keith's phone buzzed. He flinched so hard, he almost dropped it. Unknown number. He stared at Bruno, then answered on speaker. Hello, silence. Then faint breathing. Then a whisper, distorted and thin. Coordinates confirmed. The line went dead. Keith stared at the screen. That's not funny, Bruno. Bruno shook his head slowly. I didn't. Keith's phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification. He opened it, his face drained of color. What? Bruno demanded. Keith turned the screen toward him. He had posted the pictures 2 minutes ago on a horror forum. Bruno's heart slammed. I told you not to. I didn't even remember hitting upload, Keith whispered. The post already had dozens of comments. Most mocking, one stood out. User, Red Cartographer comment. You shouldn't have looked. Bruno felt something shift inside him. Not just fear, recognition. He turned slowly back toward the wall map. The red circle over his bedroom had drawn. And now, beneath it, Bruno. Written in the same tight, careful script, the scratching began again. This time, from inside the ceiling directly above Keith. If you're watching this and your skin feels tight, good. Stay with it. Because this is only where it starts. And if you've ever felt like something noticed you before you noticed it, you're going to want to see what happens next. And a thin line of red dust drifted down into Keith's open mouth as he tried to scream. Keith choked, coughing violently as red dust coated his tongue and teeth. He staggered backward, slamming into the coffee table. Bruno grabbed him, forcing him to spit into the sink. It's just drywall, Keith gasped, but his hands were shaking too hard to turn on the faucet. The scratching above them didn't stop. It moved, slowly. Tracking, Bruno looked up as a thin crack zigzagged across the ceiling toward the hallway like a line being drawn in real time. It's mapping, Bruno whispered. Stop saying that, Keith snapped. It's a house settling. It's old pipes. It's the crack curved sharply. Toward Keith, they both saw it. They both knew. Keith's phone buzzed again. Another notification from the forum. Bruno snatched it before Keith could look. The post had exploded. Hundreds of comments now. Most of them were tagging their locations jokingly. Then Bruno's stomach dropped. Usernames were disappearing mid-thread. Profiles grayed out. One comment appeared at the top, pinned somehow, though neither of them had pinned it. Red Cartographer. Expansion requires acknowledgement. Keith grabbed his phone back. Take it down. I don't know how. Delete the post. Keith tried. The delete button flickered, then froze. The screen went black for half a second. When it returned, the image on the post had changed. The map now showed more red circles, dozens. Across town, Keith's breathing grew shallow. This isn't real. This isn't real. Bruno stepped closer to the wall map. The parchment looked older somehow, darker. Veins of red branching outward like capillaries. Under Marcus's name, new text had appeared, confirmed. Bruno's phone rang. He didn't recognize the number. He answered anyway. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then a voice he remembered from the ravine. Marcus? But thinner. Strained. Bruno, Marcus whispered. You have to listen carefully. Bruno's chest tightened. Marcus, where are you? There was a scraping sound on the line. Like charcoal. It came after I saw it. Marcus said. The map. You sent it to the EMT group chat. I thought it was a joke. Bruno's mind reeled. He had sent the photo earlier that night, half laughing, asking if Marcus recognized the area. I didn't mean, it's not marking places, Marcus interrupted. It's marking people who look at it. Keith went still. Marcus's breathing hitched. It draws you into symmetry, into pattern. You start noticing things lining up. Streetlights, cracks in walls. It wants balance. Where are you? Bruno demanded. Silence. Then Marcus whispered, "It's in my apartment." The line filled with scratching, not from Bruno's ceiling. From Marcus's side, louder, closer. Marcus's voice trembled. It doesn't like corners unfinished. It keeps tracing them over and over. "Get out," Bruno shouted. "I tried," Marcus whispered. "It drew my door shut." The call ended with a sharp thud. Keith stared at Bruno. "We call the police?" "And say what?" Bruno shot back. "A map is attacking people." Keith's jaw clenched. "Then we burn it." Bruno hesitated. The moment stretched, and somewhere deep in his chest, something resisted. What if burning it confirmed something? What if destruction was acknowledgement? Keith didn't wait. He stormed into the kitchen, grabbing lighter fluid from the cabinet they used for the grill. Bruno followed. "Keith, stop." You heard him. Keith yanked the map off the wall. The frame shattered on the floor. The parchment hit the hardwood with a sound that wasn't paper. It was heavier, denser. Keith doused it in fluid. The smell filled the room. Bruno's pulse thundered. The scratching stopped completely. The silence was worse. Keith flicked the lighter. The flame caught. For half a second, Bruno felt relief. Then the fire turned dark red. It didn't consume the parchment. It traced it, following the roads, illuminating every red circle like veins glowing under skin. Keith stumbled back. That's not how fire works. The red lines spread outward off the parchment, across the floor. Thin, glowing paths racing toward the hallway, toward Bruno's room. "Stamp it out," Bruno yelled. Keith grabbed a blanket, slamming it down over the burning map. The glow vanished instantly. The room fell into heavy darkness. Smoke hung in the air. They both coughed. Slowly, Keith lifted the blanket. The parchment was untouched, no scorch marks, but the red circle over Bruno's bedroom had doubled in size, and beneath Keith's neighborhood, new writing appeared. "Keith," marked. Keith stared at his name like it had betrayed him. "I didn't even believe in this crap," he whispered. Bruno's chest tightened with guilt. The scratching returned, but not from above, from the front door. Both of them turned. A thin line etched itself down the wood in precise, careful strokes. Like something outlining the frame, Keith backed up slowly. "It can't come in." Bruno remembered something Marcus had said. "Expansion requires acknowledgement." Keith's phone buzzed again. "A private message from Red Draftsman. You brought it inside." Keith's breathing became ragged. "What does that mean?" Bruno's voice dropped. It was just a map when it was in the archive, when it wasn't opened. Keith looked at him, realization dawning. "You hung it up." Bruno's stomach sank. He had given it walls, corners, structure. The front door handle twisted slowly, not violently, gently. "Testing," Keith whispered. "It can't open doors." The handle stopped. Then the scratching resumed, on the inside of the door. Keith's eyes widened. It doesn't need to. The wood began to indent from within the grain, lines pressing outward as if something flat and immense was forcing itself through every crack at once. Keith turned to Bruno, voice breaking. "What do we do?" Bruno looked at the map, at the red circles multiplying, at the names appearing under strangers' usernames from the forum. He made a decision. "We go to where it started." "Where?" Bruno swallowed. "The structure the cartographer found. It's marked here." He pointed to a section of the map, deep in the Montana wilderness, a place Bruno had hiked before, the same ravine where he'd fallen. Keith stared at him. "You think walking toward it is safer than staying here?" The door wood splintered inward slightly, a thin parchment-colored surface pressing through. Keith's voice cracked. "Bruno." Bruno grabbed his keys. If we stay, it finishes the drawing. The handle began to turn again, this time from the inside, and as the first thin shape slid through the door like folded paper unfolding into the room, Keith screamed, "If you're still here, don't look away, because this is where choices start costing something." And the next one, it doesn't just change Bruno's life, it changes who gets erased next. They ran. And the scratching followed. Bruno didn't remember grabbing the car keys. He only remembered Keith screaming as something thin and pale pushed through the front door like paper, folding itself into a body. By the time they reached the truck, Keith's hands were shaking so badly, he dropped his phone twice. "Drive," Keith gasped. "Just drive." Bruno slammed the accelerator. Gravel spit from beneath the tires as they tore down the dark Montana road. The house shrank behind them, but the scratching didn't fade. It moved with them. Keith's breathing came in sharp bursts. "It can't follow us. It can't." The dashboard GPS flickered. The map glitched. Roads thinned into charcoal lines. A red dot pulsed exactly where their truck was moving. Keith stared at it. "It's tracking us." "No," Bruno whispered. "It's placing us." Keith grabbed his arm. "That's not better." Bruno's phone buzzed in the cup holder. Amanda. He almost didn't answer. Amanda had been the one who cataloged the estate items when he bought the map. Quiet, intense, obsessed with archival oddities. He put her on speaker. "Bruno," Amanda said immediately, breathless. "Tell me you didn't hang it." Bruno's chest tightened. "You knew. I warned you not to unfold it indoors," she snapped. That cartographer's notes weren't decorative. They were containment instructions. Keith's head whipped toward the phone. "Containment." Amanda's voice trembled. "It doesn't map geography. It maps fixation. The more attention it gets, the clearer the lines become." Bruno's voice cracked. "Marcus is marked. Keith is marked." Amanda went silent. Then, softly, "So am I." Bruno felt the world tilt. "What?" "I opened the archive copy tonight," Amanda whispered. After Keith's post went viral, the red ink bled through the protective glass. Keith swallowed hard. "You're saying this thing spreads digitally?" "It spreads through awareness," Amanda said. "Screens count." The GPS flickered again. For half a second, the roads vanished. Only red circles remained. Dozens. Hundreds. Keith stared in horror. That forum. Bruno's mind raced. If it expands through acknowledgement, then we stop feeding it. Keith laughed hysterically. "You think telling the internet to ignore it is going to fix this?" Amanda's voice sharpened. "Number but symmetry matters to it. The cartographer's journal mentions something about unfinished maps angering it." Bruno's heart pounded. Unfinished. Yes, he wrote that it obsessed over closure, balanced borders, complete shapes. Keith's voice shook. "So what? We mess up the pattern," Amanda hesitated. "Or we give it something it can't balance." Silence filled the truck except for the engine and the faint scratching coming from somewhere inside the dashboard. Bruno swallowed. "We're heading to the ravine, the structure under it." Amanda inhaled sharply. "Don't go inside. We don't have a choice." The GPS screen went black, then relit. Instead of a map, it displayed a parchment texture. A long, thin hand pressed from beneath the glass. Keith screamed and punched the screen. It shattered. The scratching stopped, for now. They reached the trailhead just before dawn. Pale gray light stretched across the mountains. Bruno stepped out first. The air felt wrong, too still. Keith grabbed his arm. "If we die out here, we're not dying," Bruno said too quickly. They hiked fast, breath ragged, boots crunching over frost-hardened ground. The ravine came into view. Bruno's pulse roared in his ears. At the base, half hidden by rock and brush, was something he hadn't noticed the night he fell. A stone arch, too symmetrical to be natural. Amanda's voice came through the phone, still connected in Bruno's pocket. "Describe it." "It looks like ribs," Keith whispered. The arch curved inward like the frame of a massive skeleton. The scratching resumed from inside. Bruno's legs trembled, but he stepped forward. The temperature dropped sharply as they crossed beneath the arch. Inside, the walls were smooth stone, covered in lines, thousands of them, maps overlapping maps, and between them, silhouettes, human shapes drawn in red ink, some faint, some dark and recent. Keith's voice broke. "Those are people." Bruno scanned the walls. He saw Marcus's outline. Half finished, one arm missing. He stumbled backward, bile rising in his throat. "It's storing them," Amanda whispered through the phone. Balancing them? At the center of the chamber stood a stone table. On it lay a fresh parchment, blank, waiting. Bruno's chest tightened. Keith stepped back toward the entrance. "We shouldn't be here," the scratching echoed behind them. A tall shape unfolded from the stone wall itself, not stepping forward, peeling forward. Its limbs were too long, too precise. Fingers tapered like drafting tools. Its skin stretched tight like old parchment pulled over bone. Bruno's breath froze. The Red Cartographer. It tilted its head slowly, studying them. Keith's voice trembled. "Bruno!" The creature's fingers traced the air between them, and faint red lines appeared around Keith's body. "Mapping him," Keith sobbed. "Don't let it finish." Bruno's mind raced. Unfinished maps anger it. Or we give it something it can't balance. He stepped toward the stone table, the blank parchment. The creature's head snapped toward him. Bruno grabbed a shard of broken stone from the floor and slashed it across his palm. Blood dripped onto the blank map. The creature paused. Bruno pressed his bleeding hand down hard. "I was marked first," he whispered. "Take me, but don't complete them." Keith shouted, "No." The creature's fingers twitched. Red lines began forming around Bruno's body instead. Keith stumbled forward. "Stop. There has to be another way." Amanda's voice came frantic through the phone. "Bruno, think. It needs symmetry." Bruno's vision blurred. Symmetry, balance. If it mapped attention, then remove the focus. He grabbed Keith's phone from his pocket. Still logged into the forum, still open. His hand shook as he went live. The camera faced him, blood on his palm, fear in his eyes. "Listen to me," he said into the phone. "If you can see this, stop looking at the map. Don't screenshot it. Don't share it. Close the thread now." Comments flooded in, confusion, mockery, fear. Behind him, the creature twitched violently as red lines flickered unstable across the chamber walls. Bruno swallowed hard. It feeds on being seen. The live viewer count climbed. The red lines brightened. Bruno felt despair crash over him. He had made it worse. The creature extended a finger toward Keith again. Keith whispered, "I'm sorry, Bruno." Bruno made one final choice. He turned the camera toward the creature fully, completely, and screamed, "Look at it." The viewer count exploded. For half a second, the entire chamber glowed red. Then every line snapped, like strings cut at once. The creature convulsed as thousands of overlapping acknowledgments crashed into it without pattern, without balance. Too much symmetry. Too much attention. It fractured, shattering into thin strips of parchment that burned away in midair. The chamber went silent. Keith collapsed to his knees. The red silhouettes faded from the walls. Bruno fell beside him, breathing hard. Amanda's voice trembled through the phone. "Bruno, Keith." Bruno looked at the blank parchment. It remained blank. No names, no circles. Keith laughed weakly. "We broke it." Bruno didn't answer, because on the stone table, faintly, almost invisibly, a single red dot appeared. Over Amanda's location, Bruno's chest tightened. He slowly lifted the phone. "Amanda," he whispered. On the other end, she went very quiet. "If you've made it this far, don't scroll away, because here's the question this leaves behind. If something only survives when it's seen, and you just watched it die, did you help destroy it, or did you help draw it somewhere new?" If this story got under your skin, like the video so it spreads in the right way. Subscribe if you want the next chapter before it finds you first. And in the comments, tell me honestly, if you saw your name written in red, would you warn everyone else? Or close the map and hope it chooses someone louder? The scratching didn't return. But somewhere far away, a new map was unfolding, and someone had just started looking at it.